Hello, TGP family. Thank you so much for logging on to YouTube and clicking play. Perhaps you're joining us at one of our grow homes that are happening today. Maybe you're watching at home by yourself, possibly with family, maybe with a coworker or a friend. No matter how you're watching or who you're watching with, we want to say welcome to the Gathering Place. Here at the Gathering Place, we make space for everyone, everywhere, to gather, grow, and go. In this month of August, we've been in a brand new collection of talks entitled Back to the Basics. And specifically, we are covering the gospel. What is the gospel? Last week in our TGP Live gathering, we talked about the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And today I am joined by Angela.
Hello.
And she is a teaching biblical extraordinaire. And so...
no pressure.
No, not at all. And so we're going to talk about a few fun facts. And so if you're watching this, if you're new to following God and hearing about the Christian faith and belief and walk, this is for you. If you're like, I've been saved for a few years and I'm on this journey and it's been a good journey with the Lord, this is also for you.
Yes.
Because we're sure that there's something that you'll hear in this conversation that perhaps may be new or refreshing for you to really grab hold of for your journey with the Father.
And I would even say for those maybe that have been walking with the Lord for a while, it never hurts to go back to the basics. No pun intended.
Yeah.
But it never hurts to go back and really actually see the reason for our faith. You know, we grow, we move on into these great, cool things, but it's very important that we remember what is at the heart of this story.
So I want to kick this off with my first question for you, Angela.
Okay.
Most people think that the gospel starts in the New Testament, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in my time of study, I've seen that the very first hint of the gospel shows up in Genesis, specifically Genesis 3 and 15.
Yes.
If I can read that for you,
Yes.
It says, this is the English Standard Version, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. So right after Adam and Eve had sinned, we see that the beginning of the gospel is happening there. Can you explain why that verse is so important for understanding God's redemption story for us?
Yes. So I think one of the beautiful things that we see in this passage, just in this like little portion, is that it's right after the fall. It's right after man has succumbed to the deception of the enemy, and God gives a promise of redemption immediately. Like, okay, I see that this has happened. I know exactly how this happened, who's responsible for it, and here is what's going to happen. And ultimately gives hope right away where Adam and Eve could have just remained in sorrow and wallow.
Yeah, literally. Shame.
Yeah. Yeah, but it literally gives a promise of hope right away that, hey, I know that this mistake has been made. I know this alters everything. However, this is what's going to happen.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think it's cool that the Lord that he leads off with that, but that you see it right in the beginning, even in the creation story.
Yeah. He always had a plan.
Yes, he always had a plan. Before the scripture talks about it being before the foundations of the world, that God knew what his plan of redemption would be. And so when you think about, I mean, like all of this just kind of fits into God's plan, but before the foundations of the world.
Yeah.
So even before Adam and Eve were on the scene, before, we're parting the seas and the sky and creating animals and all that, God already knew.
Yeah.
In his foreknowledge, he already knew.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
A good preacher could really take that point and preach that.
Listen.
That no matter what decisions you've made in life, good, bad, indifferent, that God still has a plan for you.
Yes.
That is exciting.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so got another fun fact for you, Angela.
Okay.
When we think of Noah's Ark, perhaps you've heard the story Noah's Ark. We usually picture animals marching two by two,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Two birds, two lions, maybe two roaches. Hopefully not. But usually when we picture the two animals marching two by two, perhaps you've also heard it's a picture of Jesus' salvation.
Yeah.
How does the story of Noah's Ark connect to God's plan of redemption for us?
So I think it is helpful to know that the story of Noah and his family and the ark present kind of a snapshot of the Lord's intent to rescue humanity.
Mm.
So when you think about it,
Yeah.
like God calls to Noah, he calls Noah to build this ark because the wickedness of man, the Bible talks about in Genesis 6, the wickedness of man had just overtaken everything, right? And that God like repented that he made man, right? That's King James Version. Essentially, the Lord was sorrowful that he made man because he made man, you know, like we talked about a couple weeks ago, to have a relationship with him, and man is just like,
Yep. No thanks.
yeah. So God's gonna destroy the earth, you know, and just destroy everything. Because at this point, it's, you know, it's almost like I envision the Lord. He doesn't say this, but it gives you this feeling like the Lord was like, I can't take it no more. Even though we know the Lord, you know, he bears all things and you know, in him all things hold together. But you think about it, like he desires basically to do away with it and start over with Noah's family. And so he creates this way of escape for Noah and his family. And he does this because Noah's family, or he selects Noah because Noah's family was righteous.
Yeah.
Noah specifically was righteous. And so, and it extended into his family. I mean, we read later in scripture where one of his sons had some very questionable choices that were made.
Right.
But prior to that, God is like, hey, I'm going to repopulate the earth essentially using you and your family.
Yeah.
And so I think it creates a picture of the fact that even in the Lord's anger, even in the Lord's justification for wiping out the earth, he made this earth that was pure and holy, and he made people that were initially pure and holy until they sinned and they messed it up. They're not trying to be with the Lord. And here God is like, hey, all right, I see you. I see this. Let me just start over. And let me hold on to you. Let me keep you because you actually did love me. You actually were righteous. And so I think it's a beautiful picture of the Lord, just showing that he still had that plan. Like his intent was never to completely just do away with his creation. You know, he still loved his creation. He's looking for a way to save his creation. And although we just talked about the fact that he had a plan, this is like a type or a foreshadow of what Christ did and God's ultimate redemption plan through Christ.
That's amazing. Let's talk about the Israelites.
Okay.
So the Israelites had to make animal sacrifices for their sins.
Yes.
But I've read that those sacrifices weren't the real solution. In fact, they were just a preview, a type, a foreshadowing.
Yes.
Can you break down how these sacrifices pointed forward to Jesus?
Yes. So when God calls the children of Israel out of Egypt specifically, one of the reasons that he gives, or maybe the main reason that he gives Pharaoh, is that he wants to have this people like unto himself, right? He wants them, and they want to leave so that they can go and worship the Lord. And so the Lord, he's calling them to walk in intimate fellowship with him. He gives them these set of what is known as like the Mosaic Law, right? And so these were laws that were created for the Israelites to follow. This is what they did in order to commune with the Lord, right? And so there were dietary laws, there were housing laws, there were laws about the land, there were laws about how they interacted with one another. And then then there are laws about worship and what that looked like. And so part of the system that the Lord gave them in the Mosaic Law was to sacrifice bulls, goats, doves, pigeons, and these animals, they represented different things. Their sacrifices were used for different things that they did, right? Certain different injunctions, right? If something was ceremonially clean or unclean, right? And that, let's say somebody was unclean, you came in contact with an unclean person, there were laws for how you were to separate yourself and then be reintroduced into society, basically. Yeah. But the idea behind sacrifice was that these things were taking on the guilt, taking on the sin of the person that was sacrificing them. When you think of the Day of Atonement, right? Like these are focused on what the Israelites would do in order to account for their sin for the whole year. So they bring these sacrifices and they shed the blood. They have paid for these sacrifices or brought of their own stock that they had that met certain requirements, right? There could be no spot, there could be no blemish, there couldn't be any infirmity. Like they couldn't just bring like the sick cow and be like, well, I can't use this cow anyway, so let's figure it out for the Lord. Yeah, it had to be like literally like very, very precise. And so they offer these animals to the Lord at different times, sometimes for offerings or during different portions of the year. But the goal behind it was to atone for their sin, right? And so they're taking the blood of these animals then and offering the blood of these animals to the Lord to cover their sin, right? But you asked the question about did it actually remove their sin? No. Like it was a picture of what was to come. Yeah. But now if they didn't participate in it, then sure, their sin was fragrant before the Lord, right? So this was their way to I was going to say appease, I don't think that's the right word, but this was their way to atone for their sin. Yeah. And so it was very intricate. It wasn't, I mean, it was not, there are over 600 different like Mosaic laws. And not all of them deal with temple sacrifice or worship at the temple or atonement or things like that. But all of these laws were so important. I mean, Paul says later in one of his epistles, if you broke one law, you were guilty of breaking the entire thing. Yeah. So this is not a light thing by any stretch of the imagination.
There's people who will say, oh, I only focus on New Testament. Yeah. But you have to read the Old and the New because they are so intertwined. Yes. And I want to admonish those of you who are watching, encourage those of you who are watching, do not listen to the people who say that I don't read the Old Testament doesn't apply to me. Oh, listen. As you're hearing, as you're listening even right now, from Genesis to Revelation, God was intentional about what we find in these pages. Yes. And so it is astounding to see how intentional he's been. Absolutely. Angela, can we talk about the prophets in Isaiah 53? Isaiah 53 describes Jesus suffering and his death, even in shocking detail, right? But it was written hundreds of years before he even hung on the cross and before he was even born, right? Yeah. How do the prophets help us see God's redemption plan unfolding long before Jesus had even come on the scene, turned water into wine, performed a miracle? How do the prophets help foretell that?
So when you think of the prophet's role in this, in a way, the Lord, so a prophet is someone that is speaking the word of the Lord that they have received directly from the Lord, right? So you think Moses was considered a prophet, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Jonah even was technically considered a prophet. David, in some way, could have been considered a prophet because some of his psalms are considered prophetic. But when you think of God used these people to speak his truth and to speak his word about things that were to come, right? And prophets were revered. I mean, it was very to the point where they people paid attention because if that prophet's word did not come to pass, I mean, they were that something was out of there. Yeah. And so it was no light thing to hear the prophet release the word of the Lord. And so you have primarily in Isaiah 53, but also in other places like Psalm 16, Psalm 22, in Hosea, and in other places in Daniel. There are many scriptures that speak toward the coming Messiah, right? They speak toward this Messiah that the Lord is sending, right? That Israel considered to be their Redeemer. They were looking ahead as if this person would be the person that would save them. I mean, by the time we get to Jesus' time, there was this perception that the Messiah was coming to save them from the Romans, because the Messiah is proclaimed to be someone that is a king, right? Somebody that is we quote it often around Christmas time, but wonderful counselor, mighty God, everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace, right? Yeah. These are descriptions that are given to the Messiah. And so in addition to that, there are also then descriptions of what's going to happen to this Messiah, right? We see, we talked about this last week where David in Psalm 22, that those famous words, my God, why have you forsaken me, right? David writes those words, and a couple thousand years later, Jesus is actually saying these words on the cross. Let me read to you a couple of verses from Isaiah 53, because I think this might help give some context. So in Isaiah 53, look at verse 7. It says, he was oppressed and treated harshly, yet he never said a word. If you look at the story of Jesus, specifically when Jesus has been arrested, right? The Bible talks about him literally not saying anything when he was accused of things. Like, there's very few times where Jesus answers, but for the majority of that, those trials that they were happening for him, Jesus doesn't answer. He doesn't say anything. He was led as a lamb, ding, 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 as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep is silent before the shearers, he did not open his mouth. From prison to trial, they led him away to his death. This is Isaiah, again, years, well over 1,000 years prior to Jesus being on the scene. But who among the people realized that he was dying for their sins, that he was suffering their punishment? He had done no wrong, and he never deceived anyone, but he was buried like a criminal. He was put in a rich man's grave. So even in that, put in a rich man's grave, Joseph of Arimathea, right? He gets permission. He seeks permission to have Jesus actually buried, to get the body of Jesus once Jesus has died, and to bury him in a tomb that he had. But look at this. Look at this. But it was the Lord's good plan to crush him and fill him with grief. Yet when his life is made an offering for sin, he will have a multitude of children, many heirs. He will enjoy a long life, and the Lord's plan will prosper in his hands. So you got it right there. It was the Lord's plan to crush him,
All along.
right? All along, right? But we already see where he is looking forward to many heirs, right? Paul calls us joint heirs with Christ. I mean, like the imagery and the pictures that are given from the prophets that were there before only speak towards what Jesus did and who he was. And they created this image so much. When we talked about this last week, where Jesus fulfilled over 300 of messianic prophecies that are not all just coming from Isaiah 53, right? But are coming from multiple places in the Old Testament.
Wow.
I mean,
that is Isaiah 53.
Listen.
Read it. And what translation are you reading from?
So this particular translation is the New Living Translation.
New Living Translation.
Yes.
That is incredible. The reason I'm pausing is because I'm reading the English Standard Version on my tablet here.
What's it say?
Yes, it was the will of the Lord to crush him. He has put him to grief. When his soul makes an offering for guilt, he shall see his offspring. He shall prolong his days, and the will of the Lord shall prosper in his hand.
And again, going back to sacrifices, right? And they were to take the guilt, right? To transfer the guilt onto these animals, right? So that they could be atoned for, right? But they didn't, it never really fulfills that ultimate thing of making us clean before the Lord, right? If it did, right, then Jesus would have never needed to come on the scene, right? If the system of bulls and goats was adequate, then there's no need for Jesus to come and give his life as a ransom for many.
Yeah.
To take the guilt. There's literally no reason for Jesus to do that if the old system would have worked. But the old system didn't work, and God knew that ahead of time, right? So again, he had already planned to have Jesus on the scene. Before the foundations of the world. It's crazy.
That's crazy.
And so good. It's so good.
Well, guys and gals, we want to take this moment to thank you for being a part of this conversation. This conversation does not stop here. I want to make an invitation for you to join us next weekend. Specifically in this month of August, we do have 5 Sundays.
Yes.
And so coming up next Sunday is what we call the 5th table. And our hope is that as you are gathered with someone today, that you would extend an invitation to someone in your community, within your sphere of influence, and invite them over, hang out with them, and pull up next week's gathering on YouTube and spend that time with that person that you're in community with, or people that you're in community with. And let's continue this discussion and this conversation about the gospel and God's plan of redemption for all of us. If you've enjoyed this conversation, per usual, we want to invite you to also partner with us financially. We're able to do this because of your generosity. And I want to say thank you. If you've given before, if you've been generous, thank you. If you plan on giving today, and I know you do, thank you in advance for your gift. I believe that God will bless you in immense ways, more than financially, but that he will literally bless your entire life because you have made sure to sow seed in good ground so that the harvest of souls can come in. And that's what your gift of generosity does. We cannot wait to see you until next time. God bless you.
Bye.